So I commend them for having as positive an attitude as they do, and it puts in perspective whatever bullshit I've had to go through. That they literally lost a numbers of years of their life, and they're now doing well at putting it back together.
Yeah, I mean, they lost, from 2007 to, a year ago?
So we were all in the green zone. There was a huge explosion, and immediately we started moving to the vehicles. We were all running. They called us on the radio, said that one of our teams had got hit by a V-bid. As we rolled out, we rolled through checkpoint 12. We ended up in Nisour Square. And as we were rolling into the circle, we noticed, it was strange, man. We noticed a lot of Iraqi military, and a lot of Iraqi police just on foot, scattered throughout the circle, and we had never seen anything like that.
More than usual?
Yes, sir. Usually they were at specific locations like guard posts and stuff, but there was a heavy presence. And so immediately that got my hackles up, and I felt like that something was about to happen. And so we were directed that everybody was okay in the team that the V-bid had went off. It had actually exploded outside their venue. So what they were going to do, they were going to load up the principal, and they were going to travel through Nisour Square. And so we were just going to facilitate a fast route for them to get back into the green zone. Then we were going to put them in our package and drive into the green zone, right? So we had been there for maybe 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds at the most, and we started taking incoming fire. And I heard on the radio, the IPs are engaging us. And so I looked out and I saw multiple Iraqi police. At first, they were kind of like this with their AKs, and then they started raising them up and they started engaging. And then firefight broke out, and I heard our vehicle just cut off. And Evan had said that our vehicle's down. I heard that on the radio, and we were hearing impacts on the side of our vehicle. And so I was like, man, we're hit. I just knew we were gonna die. And so I heard the machine gunners engaging, and eventually the firefight ceased, and it was probably maybe 2 or 3 minutes of back and forth between us and the enemy. And then the shift lead calls for a tow out, which means the second vehicle, our vehicle was the third vehicle, the second vehicle is gonna back up, and then they're gonna dismount fire team members and hook up a tow strap to our vehicle so that we can be pulled out, right? And so they do that, they execute the tow out, and we're traveling back to the green zone. And I remember hearing on the radio that the PSD team, Raven 4, that the initial attack had happened. Our sister team, I believe it was Raven 2-2, had picked them up and put them in their motorcade, and they were receiving contact as well on their route back. So they took another route away from Nisour Square back to the green zone. And
so that was 2 separate firefights?
Yes, sir.
Within how close of each other?
Within probably 2.5 miles, I would say, is the Hart compound. That was the compound they were at. It's probably 2 miles from the circle. So within that area, I didn't know exactly where they were at, but on their way back to the green zone, they were taking incoming as well. So you've got a radio log where we've got multiple engagements going on. We really believed on an after action report, we really believed that this was a kidnapping attempt. We really believed that they were going to detonate that V-bid and have the PSD team drive through Nisour Square, because that was the most direct route back to the green zone. And there was a huge water truck and a bus, like a big city bus, and they were going to just block off that intersection so that the PSD team would be trapped in there, and then they were going to kidnap the principal. That's how I feel about it. But they didn't expect guys with machine guns, up armored vehicles to roll into their ambush. So I think they just panicked and initiated their ambush prematurely. And so we get towed out, we make it back out of the circle, and as we're leaving the circle, I hear on the radio, we're still receiving fire, and somebody else calls out, we'll shoot back, and then he says, I can't shoot back because I can't see where it's coming from. And that was the last thing that I heard on the radio. We made it back to the parking lot, and that was it.
Do you have any idea how many people are engaging you?
I saw 2 people engaging me. I saw 2 Iraqi cops engaging.
Paul?
Yeah, my memory is much the same as far as coming into the circle. It was really spooky. It was weird because there was a lot of active INGs and IPs, and not to beat a dead horse, but it was really something that was not normal, and everybody knew that something was wrong. And so as we pulled into the square, it was again, as we got settled, it seemed to be almost immediate as far as incoming fire. And at the same time, there was the white vehicle that was pulling out of stopped traffic. And everybody, including Iraqi witnesses, said that it was what they thought was an apparent V-bid. And so in the thought process of preserving the team and engaging a legitimate threat, the thought for me was to stop that V-bid. And so that's what I did. I engaged the threat, and following that, there were 5 other, if I recall correctly, 5 other threats that were engaging us. And as the call was let out that our command vehicle, which was disengaged and not able to start anymore, I heard Corey Wainscott say over the radio, command turret gunner take up 6, because it was the wall of steel between us and the enemy where we were receiving fire from. And then the ERV backed up, hooked up the tow out, and that's when I witnessed other threats trying to engage what I thought was Dustin. And so we got the tow out, we got hooked up, and we start moving out, and the volume of fire had died way down, but there were still other rounds coming in, and again, like Nick, I heard we're still taking fire, and I heard shoot back or fire back, and it was clearly Dustin saying, I don't have a clear threat, I don't have a clear target, and he popped smoke, and we'd moved back, and we're driving down the right side of the road, button hook back, going towards the IZ. There were people up on rooftops of apartment buildings that were watching us. Clearly, they were watching what we were doing. We got back in the IZ and then went to Patriots. And then Nick pulled me out of the turret, peeled off my kit and my flight suit to check for holes. But I was good.
And the white was it the Kia?
Mm-hmm.
In the white Kia, were you being engaged by threats when the white Kia was headed your way?
As I recall, it was all at the same time.
It all happened at the same time, so it was
simultaneous.
it appeared to be a coordinated attack.
Mm-hmm. And that same car, if I remember right, was on the BOLO list that morning.
That same car was on
Yeah.
the B. There was a B on the lookout for the white Kia for a possible
If I remember
VVID.
correctly.
Yeah.
Would all you say that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Were there any other assets in there? Did you guys have air? Did you have drones? Was Mill there?
So there was a drone. I think Nick can speak a little better to that than I can. I know that air showed up kind of at the tail end of things, and they were our support as we were coming in. But as far as I recall, air didn't engage at all.
Air, the helicopters?
The gunfight had pretty much dissipated by then.
And the drone was already on station from the VBID that had gone off just a couple minutes earlier, correct?
As I
So it was
understand
already up in the air by the time you guys even rolled out at checkpoint 12?
Yes.
So I was the driver of the command vehicle, the third vehicle of the convoy. So we rolled into Nisour Square, and I agree with these guys that there was something off about the Iraqi police activity. It just seemed to be a bigger number of Iraqi police, and even I think Iraqi National Guard. And typically, when you see them, they're either directing traffic by shooting their weapons in the air, or they're lounging around in the shade resting. They're not really too active. So I did notice when we pulled up into the circle, it was totally packed with traffic, and the IPs seemed to be maneuvering around and kind of like frantic movements, and that caught my attention. So pretty much as soon as we came to a stop, within a minute or less, we received incoming fire, small arms fire, and I started hearing the pings on the side of my vehicle. And at the same time, I don't know if I heard Paul yell it out on the radio or just yell it out down the turret that there was a white Kia that was presenting a threat and it was coming towards the vehicle. So I'm kind of scanning the area looking for threats. I see the activity. I see some IPs raising their AKs, firing at the convoy. And then at the same time, that white Kia is coming forward as well. But as a driver, your job is to safely move the team from point A to point B, and also give the turret gunner a secure platform to protect the team. So while I was looking for threats and scanning the area and calling out things that I was seeing, my job was to drive. So I just happened to glance down at the dashboard, and all of the dash lights were illuminated, which kind of concerned me, because that would mean that the vehicle is turned off. So I turned the key again, and it wouldn't start. It just kind of clicked. So I did it a couple times, and I looked over the team leader to my right, and I said, "Hey, Haas, this vehicle's dead, man." And we were kind of in the middle of receiving all that fire. So as we spoke about earlier, we were in armored vehicles, but just because you're in an armored vehicle doesn't mean that you're totally protected. It doesn't mean you're in behind a force field. Yes, it does protect against small arms fire, but once you receive a certain number of small arms rounds, or even an explosion or an RPG, you're going to have big problems no matter what armor you have. So one of the images that kind of would pop into my head was that image of the 4 guys in Fallujah that got burned in that convoy and strung up on that bridge.
So that was March 31st, 2004. So that's about 8-9 months after the U.S. originally invades Iraq. And I'd actually been to that area just 3 weeks before it happened. And we had 4 guys that were just escorting some trucks to go move some food equipment. That's all it was. It was nothing more elaborate or exotic than that. And they had met with the supposed to be the reliable, trusted Iraqis to give them guidance about where to go. And, remember, the areas of Fallujah and Ramadi had heavy fighting after that, because they'd never really been pacified. They'd never really been cleaned out, right? The maneuver warfare, lightning approach of the U.S. invasion in 2003 bypassed many of those spots of hot resistance. And Fallujah and Ramadi were where a lot of, it was effectively an Iraqi Republican Guard retirement area, right? So there was a real hotbed of people that were not happy. And the guys were basically led into an ambush, and they were shot up immediately, and their bodies desecrated. The terrible scenes of them being dragged through the streets and hung from the bridge. It was all done for the propaganda effect, to try to terrorize the U.S. presence in the country. And I'll never forget it. Like I said, I'd been there I knew some of those guys. Like, I'd been with Zavko every day for 10 days prior to that happening. And I actually went, and because I knew him, I immediately flew to do the notification for his family in Cleveland, Ohio that night. And Gary went and took care of one of the SEAL that was lost, and one of our aviators went and took care of Mike Teague, and so it was personal for all of us. I never lost anyone under my command or authority when I was in the SEAL teams, and this was the first for us as a company. And it was, early in the Iraq days, went from quite peaceful after the initial shock to the insurgency kind of exploded. March 31, those guys are ambushed in Fallujah. 3 days later, our guys are ambushed on the road between Baghdad and the airport. And at least 2 or 3 of our guys are killed. And one of them put on a literally a Navy Cross level performance, which saved them. And then, like, by the 4th of April in Fallujah, in Najaf, right? You have 1,000 plus Shia militiamen attacking a coalition facility, and they initiated attack by taking a Colombian soldier, stuffing a grenade in his mouth, and pulling the pin.
That's how they did that.
Yeah. Okay. So it was on, and we had 8. We were not supposed to be protecting the facility down in Najaf. We had 8 guys there providing PSD support for the lead diplomat that was there, and that's it. But I'll never forget that phone call I got at like 2:00 in the morning, and it was our air boss, Richard Pear, saying, "Hey, boss, our guys are in it, and they're surrounded, and they're running out of ammo, and we'd like to send the little birds." I said, "Of course, send them." He says, "But remember, we're not insured, right? Because 3 weeks before, there was a DHL cargo jet that had been shot down by a missile flying out of Baghdad. And their insurer was our insurer, who promptly told us, hey, we're canceling your insurance policy. We were on a firm fixed price contract, so I couldn't just say, oh, by the way, I'm going to add another $1.5 million to our insurance policy, to our charge, and buy insurance. No, so they canceled it. So the aircraft were self-insured by me. If they were shot down, I had to replace it, within days to have it going again. So he was calling to tell me to say, hey, it's on us, or it's on me. We're sending these aircraft. If it's okay with you. I said, absolutely. And so off they go. And again, the right people with the right experience and the right mission, the TF-160 guys had already taken it upon themselves to have a cache of heavy weapons ready to go, staged right there next to the ramp, so that when the alarm bell went up, there was no drama. They lure at the birds, ask for volunteers, down go the 3 helicopters, and evacuated a Marine who had been shot through. The Marine Corps gave him a Silver Star and Bronze Stars to a bunch of the other soldiers that day. And the DOD didn't give any of our guys awards. We gave them awards, but that also kind of started our tradition of presenting awards to our guys that went above and beyond the call of duty. I remember we ended up coining a medal, and it was an image of St. Michael the Archangel with a sword stepping on a demon, and on the top of it just said Servium, right? Servium is the Latin word for I will serve, because our guys were ultimately volunteers.
What was going through your head on March 31st, 2004, and when did you see that?
I'd gotten phone calls that they were missing, that we had a team that was not accounted for and were missing, and then when the video came in of a Mitsubishi Pajero on fire, then it was, we knew it was bad. That is the ultimate gut punch.
Yeah.
It's awful. And then to fly to see his parents. I Remember, I told his brother and sister-in-law first, and then his parents came to their house. And we had a connection with the U.S. Marshal, so I had a marshal come with me, and he just waited outside, just so I guess the people knew it was an official thing. But yeah, just terrible.
Were those bodies ever recovered?
Yes. Thanks God to the Marine Corps.
Good. Moving into the incident, which undoubtedly was the downturn of Blackwater, 2007, Nisour Square.
Yep.
What's your take?
I want to give a big thank you out right now to all the Vigilance Elite patrons out there that are watching the show right now. Just want to say thank you guys. You are our top supporters and you're what makes this show actually happen. If you're not on Vigilance Elite Patreon, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in there. So, we do a little bit of everything. There's plenty of behind the scenes content from the actual Shawn Ryan show. On top of that, basically what I do is I take a lot of the questions that I get from you guys or the patrons, and then I turn them into videos. So we get, right now, there's a lot of concern about self-defense, home defense, crimes on the rise all throughout the country, actually all throughout the world. And so we talk about everything from how to prep your home, how to clear your home, how to get familiar with a firearm, both rifle and pistol, for beginners and advanced. We talk about mindset. We talk about defensive driving. We have an end of the month live chat that I'm on at the end of every month where we can talk about whatever topics you guys have. It's actually done on Zoom. You might enjoy it. Check it out. And if Zoom's not your thing, or you don't like live chats, like I said, there's a library of well over 100 videos on where to start with prepping, all the firearm stuff, pretty much anything you can think of, it's on there. So anyways, go to www.patreon.com/vigilanceelite, or just go in the link in the description. It'll take you right there. And if you don't want to, and you just want to continue to watch the show, that's fine too. I appreciate it either way. Love you all. Let's get back to the show. Thank you.
It was a life or death moment. So the team leader kind of snapped me out of my driver mode because the vehicle was obviously disabled from incoming rounds, and he told me to open the door so he could engage. So I swung the door open with my foot, leaned back against the seat, and he leaned over me and fired at some threats that he was identifying. I'm not sure how many rounds he really shot. It wasn't more than one magazine, but he pulled back. I shut the door and started working on the vehicle again. Shortly after, I kind of gave up on the vehicle because it was not going to start, and it was just a waste. Yeah, it was a waste of time. So he told me to open the door again, and that's when we both engaged. I saw an IP that was kind of behind a fighting position. There was like some sandbags, and he was actively shooting at the convoy. So I shot in his direction, neutralized the threat, and shut the door. I think it was at that time where there was like a little lull in the firefight, and there's a few things that you could do when you're being actively engaged or you get hit by a IED or VBID. One of the things that you could do is the X is what you call the area when you're basically it's the danger area where all the fire is going to be directed at the X. So
The X is basically the best way to describe the X. The X is the entire focus of the battlefield. It is a magnet for bullets.
right,
So you want to get off the X as fast as possible, your vehicle being the X, because it's disabled and they're already shooting at it.
right. So we were kind of sitting ducks at that point. So one of the options that we had was for the follow vehicle to actually put their bumper against our rear bumper and push us out. But because of the way the vehicles were positioned, the amount of traffic in the circle, and the route that we would have to take to get just off the X, it wasn't feasible. It just would have been too hard to maneuver the vehicle without power steering. So the team leader made the call that we're going to tow out. And like Nick said, the ERV vehicle, which is the second vehicle in the convoy, backs up. The follow vehicle provides cover for the side of the threat. They hook up the tow strap, and then they tow you out. So on the way back, I do remember guys calling on the radio that were receiving fire still from back in the circle. And Dustin came on the radio and said he didn't have a clear shot. And then we got pulled back to the green zone, fighting the vehicle the whole time. And that was it. It was a relatively minor engagement in the big scheme of things. It's serious anytime you discharge your weapon, but the amount of firefights that we had been in the weeks leading up to that, in comparison, it was a relatively minor engagement, in my opinion.
Well, as we rolled into the circle, we started receiving fire. I don't recall exactly the timeline of how fast everything happened. I mean, it's been some time ago. I just know that we were being shot at from the south down there. There's an area that I could clearly see people engaging us, and I neutralized the threat. And I'm not sure how many people was there. It's just one of those things that you've got a problem and you got to solve it. And like they were saying about the IPs and everything, one of the things that was dividing my attention is there was a bunker that had a belt fed in it off to the it'd be out of the area that we came leaving the checkpoint. We drove right by it. And so not only was I dealing with the active threat, but I was also kind of keeping an eye on that too. And so I know that after everything, it was short. It wasn't a big firefight. It was after everything was done, I started throwing smoke on the way out. And that way it covers our exit to where if the enemy can't see you, then they can't shoot you.
You're providing concealment for the entire convoy.
Yeah, I threw every smoke that we had. And, they said that we was acting irrational or stuff like that. And so my fire team member, which is the guy inside the vehicle, he handed me up a thermite. And I looked at that and realized it was a thermite and not a smoke. I could have thrown it. I could have just chunked it wherever and let whatever burn. But instead, I handed it back to him saying, hey, man, if we need this, we're going to need it. I'm not just going to throw it. So as we were leaving, and it'd be to the north of the circle, I could still see shit skipping off the pavement around us. And I called out on the radio and I said, hey, we're still taking fire. And that was after the tow out and everything else. And it wasn't a lot, but it was still enough to concern me. Well, I actually got hit by something. I don't know what it ricocheted off of, but it hit me in the chin strap of my Kevlar. And so I had a big old pop knot on my chin, and it landed in the bend of my arm right here. And the Nomax suit's like 1,500 degrees before it's supposed to combust. And I was actually on fire. And so I put the fire out with my glove and everything. And then whenever I called and I said, hey, we're taking fire, I got the order from my team leader saying, shoot back. And I called back over the radio. I said, I can't shoot back. I don't have a target. I'm not just going to open up. I had 400 rounds linked together. And if I wanted to be malicious, I wouldn't have had a one linked up. I had all kinds of ammo in the truck too. So I had plenty of ammo if I wanted to be malicious. And we got back to the Patriots parking lot. And as soon as we came into the gate, before we got there, I stripped off my armor and had my fire team member check me because I knew I'd been hit by something to make sure that I didn't have a hole in me that I didn't feel because of the adrenaline and everything else. And so I didn't have any holes in me, which was good. And when we got back to Patriots, I went and got my burns dressed and everything. So that was pretty much the short and sweet of it.
How many other teammates out there out of the 19 of you guys were engaging threats? Do you know? Was everybody?
No, it would have been.
I think there was like 7 total.
7?
Yes, sir. 7 out of the 19, I think, engaged.
The way the trucks were positioned, we were spread out across the southern side of the circle pretty good. So the distance between the lead vehicle and the follow vehicle would be, what? It was a good distance. So what the people in the lead and the second vehicle are looking at is not necessarily the same as the third and fourth vehicle. And there was a median that went basically right where the second and third vehicle were separated. So if you were in those first 2 vehicles, that street that most of the threats were on was blocked by palm trees in that median. So, and it's hard to really say with any accuracy how many guys were firing also, because we were all in, us 3 were in one truck, Dustin was in the follow. So, like we've said before, when you're in a firefight, you're kind of paying attention to the threat and doing your thing. You're not really conscious of, hey, this guy in this truck is firing out this porthole or this gunner is shooting in this direction. You really don't know. So anything that I would say now would be something I heard after the fact. So, yeah.
How much distance was between you guys and the threats that you were engaging?
75, 100 meters maybe.
The Kia did get pretty close as well. As far as the IP's maneuvering, yeah, 50, 75 meters.
The Kia was a very controversial topic when you guys got to court, and there was another shooter who engaged the Kia, who wasn't there?
Right.
That wasn't you guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually 2 other shooters besides us that engaged the Kia. And one was dropped for lack of evidence because nobody saw him shot or him shoot. He's the one that said in his sworn statement that he shot. And then the other one that's not here with us today took a guilty plea. And he's admitted to killing the passenger and if not the driver, if I'm not mistaken.
So just to recap, there was a V-bid, your team got hit, your sister team got hit. They went out to go recover them. There's also there was a Army engagement also happening at the exact same time, plus your engagement, so that's 3 firefights within 5-mile radius, correct? Then you showed up, there was already a drone on station who was filming footage, and you had 2 Blackwater little birds on station as well out there. So you get back. Did you guys think anything of it?
No.
It sounds like a pretty minor engagement compared to some of the other stuff that we just talked about.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When we got back, the main concern was get ready in case we had to go back out.
Yep, I brought the vehicle straight to get repaired and get loaded up, and my main concern was getting that vehicle ready to go back out.
Yeah, because there were still other teams out there on venue.
The Iraq War was a maelstrom of conflicting forces, right? You had angry Sunnis, you had angry Shia, you had constant Iranian presence, the IRGC and the Quds forces, the Iranians, special units were very, very active in the country, stirring up hate and discontent to make it impossible or difficult for the U.S. to stay. And, you know, for people that think it's all peace, love, and happiness in Baghdad at that time, that our guys just started shooting willy-nilly, unprovoked, and all the rest, it had been a very dangerous week for us just in the 7 days prior, right? We had another convoy of guys that got ambushed and shot up on the Baghdad highway. Another one that had been hit by an EFP, right? An EFP is an explosive form penetrator. It's a copper plate in front of a coffee can full of explosives. And when you initiate that, the explosive goes off at 22,000 feet per second, turns that copper plate into a slug of copper going 8,000 feet per second and bored right through their armored vehicle. Fortunately, it didn't kill any of our guys that time, but it sent them to the hospital. We had a helicopter shot down just days before that. And then the day of Nisour Square, a car bomb goes off where we had a team. It went off outside of a venue where he had a team protecting a USAID official. And instead of hard pointing at that facility, which they normally would, all the Iraqis had run away, so they decided to move. And so, in the chaos that follows, Raven 23, one of the teams, is called, and I'm not going to try to re-describe the masterful description you did sitting down with those guys, but to suffice it to say that traffic circles in Baghdad are like the trail intersections if you're hunting deer, right? If you're a deer hunter, or if you're an insurgent trying to hunt Americans, you hunt the traffic circles, and so they go to block the traffic, and some traffic doesn't stop, and shooting entails. What I can tell you though is how badly the Iranians wanted the U.S. out and how badly they wanted Blackwater out of Iraq. In 2004 already, early, the head of the Iraqi intelligence service came to me, a fantastic guy named Mohammed Shawani. That's another guy you should interview here. Okay? A true Iraqi patriot and a great warrior. And he said, he came with his agency handler and said the Iranians are setting up all kinds of direct action, cash offices, political influence operations. They're doing in Iraq what they did in Lebanon with Hezbollah to exert control. And we, the Iraqi government, we, the Iraqi intelligence service, want to stop it. So please put a program together to help us do that. And so he priced the whole thing up, gave it to them. They loved it. The agency was going to fund it. And it was stopped by Condi Rice in the NSC. No, the Iranians are not our enemy. We have to let the Iraqi political process play out, all the rest. I think that's a real sliding door moment in the history of Iraq, because if we had severed those talons of Iran sinking their hooks into the Iraqi state, things would be very, very different in Iraq right now.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.